Starting a business can seem like a daunting task, unless you have a partner like Shopify. They have the tools you need to start and grow your business. From designing a website to marketing to selling and beyond, Shopify can help with everything you need. There's a reason millions of companies like Mattel, Heinz, and Allbirds continue to trust and use them. With Shopify on your side, turn your big business idea into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.
With the Venmo debit card, you can Venmo everything. Your favorite band's merch? You can Venmo this. Or their next show? You can Venmo that. Visit venmo.me/debit to learn more. The Venmo MasterCard is issued by the Bancorp Bank N.A. pursuant to license by MasterCard International Incorporated. Card may be used everywhere MasterCard is accepted. Venmo purchase restrictions apply.
This episode is brought to you by Polestar. There's only one true way to experience the all-electric luxury SUV Polestar 3, and that's to take a test drive. It can go from 0 to 60 in as little as 4.8 seconds with the dynamic handling of a sports car. But to truly understand how it commands the road, you need to be behind the wheel. Up to 350 miles of range, the 3D surround sound system by Bowers & Wilkins. It's all something you have to experience to believe. So book your test drive for Polestar 3 today at polestar.com.
Close your eyes, exhale, feel your body relax, and let go of whatever you're carrying today.
Well, I'm letting go of the worry that I wouldn't get my new contacts in time for this class. I got them delivered free from 1-800-CONTACTS. Oh my gosh, they're so fast.
And breathe.
Oh, sorry. I almost couldn't breathe when I saw the discount they gave me on my first order. Oh, sorry. Namaste.
Visit 1-800-CONTACTS.com today to save on your first order.
1-800-CONTACTS.
This episode is brought to you by Avid Reader Press. Legendary investor Ray Dalio's new book, How Countries Go Broke: The Big Cycle, explains the mechanics behind big debt crises. Larry Summers says Dalio's brilliant iconoclastic approach is an invaluable resource, and Hank Paulson says it provides a solution to what is the biggest and most certain threat to our prosperity. Read it to understand the greatest economic issue of our time. Available now wherever books are sold.
If you went on a road trip and you didn't stop for a Big Mac or drop a crispy fry between the car seats or use your McDonald's bag as a placemat, then that wasn't a road trip. It was just a really long drive. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
At participating McDonald's.
Welcome to the HCI family of podcasts. We're your source for personal, professional, and organizational growth and development. We share our own original research, explore industry trends, and interview executives and thought leaders from across the globe. Join us for practitioner-oriented content around all things leadership, HR, talent management, organizational development, and change management. Maximize your personal and organizational potential with the HCI family of podcasts. Jessica Pryce-Jones, welcome to the conversation today.
It's a great pleasure to be here, John. Thank you so much for inviting me.
It is a pleasure to be with you. You're joining us from Oxford. I'm south of Salt Lake City in Utah. And today we're going to be talking about your book, Intuition at Work, Using Your Gut Feelings to Get Ahead. I love the title. As we were talking in the pre-interview, what a fun title. I'm super thrilled to have the chance to sit down and to unpack this work with you. As we get started, I'll share your bio with everybody. Jessica Pryce-Jones is the author of Intuition at Work, and she started her career in finance, where she learned about numbers, strategy, and leadership. After 10 years in the corporate world, she completed a psychology degree. She wanted to understand why some of her bosses were brilliant and others were dismal. Those insights launched a new career facilitating coaching and designing interventions in writing. Clients include multinationals in healthcare, professional services, banking, creative education, manufacturing, publishing, and engineering industries, as well as the public and not-for-profit sectors. She has also worked as an adjunct faculty in leadership development at many business schools, including Cambridge, Cass, Cornell, Chicago Booth, Cranfield, London Business School, and Oxford. She is a fellow of Harvard's Institute of Coaching, and she has written 2 previous books, Happiness at Work, Maximizing Your Psychological Capital for Success, and Running Great Meetings and Workshops for Dummies.
Hey, it's Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. Now, I was looking for fun ways to tell you that Mint's offer of unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month is back. So I thought it would be fun if we made $15 bills. But it turns out that's very illegal. So there goes my big idea for the commercial. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
Hey business owners, we know you know the importance of maximizing every dollar. With the Delta SkyMiles Reserve Business American Express card, you can make your expenses work just as hard as you. From afternoon coffee runs to stocking office supplies and even team dinners, you can earn miles on all your business expenses. Plus, you can earn 110,000 bonus miles for a limited time through July 16th. The Delta SkyMiles Reserve Business Card. If you travel, you know. Minimum spending requirements and terms apply. Offer ends 7/16/25.
Pryce-Jones divides her time between France and the UK, but works all over the world. What a wonderful background. You've accomplished so much. Anything you would like to highlight about your background before we dive on in?
No, I think that all sounds good. I really do enjoy the writing part, and I guess that's what was secondary in my career is now becoming primary. So that's fun.
Yeah, excellent. Well, so you're an executive coach. You're a director of the Website Collective, facilitator, author, like you said. You've written this new book, Intuition at Work. How do you define intuition, and why did you title the book that way?
So for me, intuition is really about a feeling of knowing. So when you have that thought, it's generally accompanied by this is right, this is wrong sensation. Mm-hmm. And lots of people don't define it that. They define intuition as knowing something without knowing how you know it, which I think misses part of that experience, which is there's generally an internal sense of something going on for you. And I think that's part of how we recognize what intuition is, because you go, oh yeah, I felt that before, or pay attention, this might not work out. So that's how I define it. And no, John, I've forgotten what your first question was. You asked me another one.
Yeah, just really how you go about defining intuition and why you titled the book that way.
Oh yeah, okay. So I titled the book that way because I think it's really time to be overt about what intuition is. And so often when I'm coaching people, I've said to them, what's your gut telling you? And, we make some critical decisions based on it. And it's super important, particularly at times which are volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. Yeah. Because we don't have the data. And when you don't have the data as a senior leader, all you can go on is your gut, your intuition, your judgment, your opinion, call it what you want, but it's informed at some level. And so I think it's time to bring this stuff out of the broom closet.
Yeah. And, as much as we would like to always have the data, we just don't. and sometimes we have the facade of having data, and we like to use the term making data-driven decisions. And I would like to think, I'm an analytical guy. I would like to think that I'm always making data-driven decisions. But I think the best I can really do is try to make data-informed decisions, because the reality is I never have all the data that I would need to make, fully data-driven decisions, because there's always gaps, and there's always interpretation involved in any data that I might have anyways. There's always ambiguity, and there's always that interpretation that has to happen. And there's different ways to view any set of data and different framings for any set of data, right? So there's always going to be that subjectivity, and there's always going to be that intuition involved. And so I get nervous when people talk about making decisions based on the data or decisions based solely on the facts, because it's a facade. I just don't think we can do it. So while I think it's important for us to try to gather as much relevant information as possible, we also don't want to get stuck, in analysis paralysis, and we don't want to, be constantly searching for this unicorn of like infinite amounts of data before we can make a decision. And so we have to balance, and we have to just own the fact that, yes, we're going to use our own wisdom. We're going to use our own insight. We're going to use our own judgment. And ultimately, we're going to use our own our own intuition in how we go about making sense of complex information, complex data, and complex situations with a lot of ambiguity built in, right?
John, I am so with you. And I think that there's something really important to say here, which is this isn't about abandoning your data and analysis. This is about saying, okay, what insights and intuitions am I getting from this thing? And if you have an insight or you have an intuition about something, it's go get the data. So it's a both and
Yeah.
rather than a either or. And I think it's also time to talk about it because we know very clearly from the research that the higher up an organization you go, the more you will use your intuition. So when you ask first frontline leaders, are you using your intuition? 50% of them say, yes, I am. And that creeps up until you hit CEO level. And at CEO level, 99% of CEOs, when asked how they make decisions, say that they will engage their intuition. But nobody's saying that this thing matters as you climb the hierarchy, but it sure does. And you're promoted for the quality of your decisions. So it's like bring everything that you've got to your decision making toolkit, including your intuition.
Yeah. So I think that's right. And you talk about in your book the how intuition plays a really important role in leadership positions. I think it makes sense completely because leaders, they have to make so many decisions on just on a regular basis, right? You're constantly being bombarded with complex situations. You're constantly making decisions that are going to impact a lot of people. Tell us though more about what you're thinking in terms of the role of intuition in everyday leadership and why leaders of large organizations should and really need to be better attuned to and paying attention to their gut.
Well, I think that many leaders do. And sometimes they're just not recognizing that that's what they're doing. And they're not talking about it. But we know that when you have to, as a leader, and as you climb the hierarchy, you're making choices about strategy. You're making choices about people. Now, strategy and people are both what the French call flou. It means that they're spongy. You can't grab hold of this thing and make the right decision. You just can make the best decision you can, and therefore, you using your intuition will help you do that very thing. And the data is super clear about that. When you look at the data, it's telling us that it's particularly good in those difficult and unclear situations. So the big thing for me is that if you're not using your intuition, you can bet your bottom dollar that your competition will be. And your competition might be your peers, but it might be external to your business as well. So that for me is why it's key to train what your intuition can do and to use it in the small circumstances and situations before you go out and say, right, we're going to decide, are we going to invest 100 million here or not? If that's the first time you're doing it, well, it's a bit too late. And then you might be driven by bias and wishful thinking and all those other things. So it's understanding what it is and how it shows up for you. You need to learn what that is before you take it out there and play in the big guns.
I think that's really, really important. And what you just said about bias, because we all have it, right? We all have all these different biases. And so learning to be attuned to ourselves is just really, really critical, to be able to be familiar with our biases, is so important. And man, there's just been so many times where I've heard people talk about, following their gut when it's from an outside observer's perspective, as I'm hearing them explain, it's so completely transparent to me that all they're talking about is some sort of um, implicit bias or some sort of like confirmation bias that they're explaining. And so there has to be a really high level of self-awareness. I think if you're going to really try to make important high level decisions based off of intuition, Yes, first in lower stakes. I mean, as you're describing it, I think of it in terms of lower stakes, kind of smaller everyday types of situations. Flex that muscle, practice, like get exposure to what it feels like, understand yourself, be attuned to yourself, and that will then put you in a better position to when the harder things come about, that yeah, you will be able to know, and at least have a little bit more clarity about what you're dealing with, right?
Totally, and I think that there are some quite useful tips for separating out. Is this bias or is this intuition? And you're recognizing you're totally right about confirmation bias being kind of the worst bias to get mixed up and mistaken for intuition. And the problem with confirmation bias is it leads to selective attention and overconfidence and poor decisions and therefore costly outcomes. Which is, this is not your intuition. This is bias. And you'll recognize bias if you're searching for information to confirm what you know, or you're cherry picking data that just confirms your existing beliefs, or you're interpreting information to confirm your thoughts and discarding what else it might mean, or just remembering facts that support your position. So those are the kind of cues to yourself, which is, hello, is there another way of looking at this stuff? And asking yourself, are you willing to choose something other than what you've chosen before? And what is it that would make you change your mind? And are you bringing in some operating principles by which you're making difficult decisions? Because I'm a great believer in operating principles. And that might mean, for example, like I'm going out there and I'm going to test all my big decisions on you, John, and you get feedback from you, because I think the really important thing about intuition, the really important thing is that you get feedback. And if you're not willing to accept feedback, I would challenge you on the fact, are you really using your intuition? Because let's face it, intuition is much better than 50%, but it's not much better than 80, 85%. Therefore, just like a spreadsheet, and you can program it with variables which don't play out, you just need to question yourself and get feedback and bring in a little diversity to your decision making now and again. So that's how I would deal with is it bias or actually is it my intuition?
Yeah, I think those are some great tips. So as we think about so intuition and leadership, so important. As we think about intuition and the role it plays in business, hiring, firing, mergers, acquisitions. Talk through that with us a little bit. Again, sometimes these relate back to leadership decisions, but they're broader strategic and process-based decisions as well. And they have huge, wide, impacting kinds of decisions. How do we go about making sense of these huge decisions when ultimately, I mean, lives are impacted, right? Huge impacts.
Yeah, it's really interesting because my eldest son was a management consultant for one of the large American management consultancies. And he got involved in doing a project that was supposed to save a business 200 million. And he felt right from the outset it was going to save $0. And it was a nightmare project. It was very ego driven. And they did an evaluation of it a couple of years ago, 3 years post project, and it had not saved a single dollar. And that is because the people sitting around the table, I am absolutely sure, well, when they were looking at the decision that needed to be made, we're not making a collective one. It was probably one person who had the power and authority, who was saying that they wanted to do this thing. And so I think, for collective intuition to work, and it is a thing, by the way, collective intuition, it's really exciting new research about, what group and team intuition is, which shows that you need to really leverage the difference between, okay, what are we feeling? And now what are we thinking? And, what are our internal cues telling us as the conversation is evolving? And if you can do that, you arrive at some really interesting decisions and outputs, which you wouldn't necessarily come to. It's not brainstorming, it's evolving decision making by using both analysis and intuition and deliberately checking in between one and the other as you go. And I think that's just such a fabulous way to work with a team. So going back to my first example, that absolutely didn't happen. And it cannot happen when you get one leader who's making big decisions based on this is going to be great for my pocketbook. And so I'm working inside a couple of organizations right now, and they've made some catastrophic investment decisions, acquisitions that they're now having to sell off at a vast loss. And you think, wow, all the capital and the human capital that has been destroyed in this process. If only they could have made a better decision at the beginning. And it's not hard to do. It's really not hard to do, but you have to be open to the process.
Yeah. And that openness is a challenge. It requires intellectual humility, which again, I think most leaders probably have that intention. We certainly, there are narcissistic leaders, there are completely arrogant leaders. I think most leaders are trying to do right by others, and they're trying to keep their ego in check. But leaders are promoted and rise in the ranks because they're successful, and so they're going to trust in their judgment and sometimes over trust in their judgment, and so there's always a need to check yourself and to practice intellectual humility, and to get outside input, right, and so that you can approach it in that way. I think I think that's a really, really key important point. And just to make sure that you're always understanding the holistic issues and understanding the impacts of what it could happen based on the decisions that you're making. That can make it really difficult to respond to challenging situations. But that's what leadership is, right? And that's, you're faced with ethical dilemmas. You're faced with impossible decisions. You're faced
You're
with
paid for.
yeah, that's what you're paid for, and you're faced with situations where sometimes there may not be a right answer or a best answer or an answer that will ultimately be good for everyone or anyone. I mean, you're trying to just do the best you can, and so just practicing that intellectual humility at least will put you in a better situation to check your bias, to follow your intuition in a healthy way, and hopefully come to a conclusion, a decision that at least you can look yourself in the mirror at the end of the night and feel good about it, right?
Yeah, I remember talking to Mark Thompson when he was Director General of the BBC, and this must have been about 15 years ago, and I interviewed him. And I said, Mark, how is it you decide to spend 100 million on costume drama or football, as us Brits like to call it, soccer? And he said, look, I get all the consultants in, we do all the data analysis, we look at audiences, and then I just go away and sleep on it. And I think that is the top tip. Incubating an answer is a very good practice. So if you're feeling one thing and then you're uncertain, it's just sleep on it. Incubation is a great way of checking yourself. And there's something faster. I interviewed a polar explorer, and he gave me this one. I thought this was lovely, which is, he imagines, when he goes left or right, for him, it may be the choice between life or death, because you've got to cross all these crevasses, and you cross the wrong crevasse, and that's it. So he said to me, and he was a young guy, only in his 30s, that he imagines a mental coin toss in his head. And it's not whether the coin lands on heads or tails that makes the decision, but he's noticing where he wants the coin when it's in the middle of the air, where he wants it to land. And that is his intuition. And so it's checking in with where he wants the coin to land. I thought that's a brilliant little quick intuitive tool. So I thought I'd share that.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Well, Jessica, this has just been a really great conversation. I know we've only scratched the surface. There's so much more depth and just wonderful insight in your book. But that's why it's wonderful that you have a book. Everyone can go out and check it out, get a copy, and read all of the great wisdom that you have there. As we start to wrap things up for today, I just wanted to give you a chance to share with the audience how they can connect with you, find out more about your work, where they can find your book, and then give us the final word on the topic for today.
So everyone can connect with me, and I'm delighted to connect with people on LinkedIn. And that's the easiest way to find me. And my name is spelled Pryce, Pryce-Jones. And if you want the book, Amazon is your friend. So I know it's up there on Amazon. And my final word on intuition is, listen to your gut. It's there to be your friend. Treat it as such, and it will pay you back handsomely.
Thank you so much. It has been a real pleasure. I encourage the audience to reach out, to get connected, find out more about what Jessica can do for you. Check out the book. And as always, I hope everyone can stay healthy and safe, that you can find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And I hope you all have a great week. Thanks for joining us for this episode of the podcast. We hope you stay healthy and safe, and please join us again soon.